Okay, so real quickly, some housekeeping. What I want you to do for homework this week, since you already have this nice long paragraph that you've been working on, what I want you to do is just add prepositions to the paragraph you've already done. Um, since you don't have a lot of space, right? A lot of it's hard to fit everything in here. You can send me just the prepositions, and that's fine, right? There's lots of different types of prepositions that we're going to learn today, but the four that I want you to be able to recognize and mark are prepositions of time, place, direction, and connection. Now note, please don't get prepositions of time confused with adverbs of time. They're unrelated, right? An adverb of time would be something like whenever, but a preposition of time would be like at 9 o'clock, right? So we'll discuss prepositions today. So that will be your homework. Also remember, you have the exam coming on week 10. So make sure you're taking good notes. Make sure you're preparing. Again, it's open notes. And make sure you know the difference between adjectives and adverbs. Okay, you don't need to know every type, but you do need to understand their function in a sentence. Okay? All right, so we're starting here with prepositions. This is page 784 in your PDF, page 784. So prepositions are used to express the relationship of a noun or pronoun to the rest of the sentence. The way I had this described to me as a child is think of prepositions like roads, right? 길. There are roads in between nouns and other nouns or nouns and verbs, things like that. Think about the phrase going to school, right? Going is a verb and school is a noun, but the road in between them is the word to, right? That is a preposition. So just so you understand, this might help you remember prepositions better. Pre, you remember, means 먼저, 전에, and position means place. So before place, right? 학교에 가요, right? I'm going to school. They're the things that go before places. Now, those are prepositions of place. There's different types of prepositions, but that's where the word comes from. So keep thinking of it that way. It's the road that comes before the place, right? You have to travel through this world, right? Shopping with my mom, right? With would be the preposition, right? It is the road in between shopping and my mom. Now, just like with all the other parts of speech, if you combine a part of speech with another word, it becomes a phrase, right? Just like turn off, right? Or bluebird, right? Same thing with prepositions. So it's normally a preposition plus a place or plus a noun, right? Or time, something like that. So for example, there is a film at noon we could see. So here, the preposition at and the noun noon are working as a prepositional phrase. In this case, it's modifying the film. It's saying what kind of film or when is the film in this case. So that's why they say it's an adjectival, right? It's modifying the noun film, and adjectives modify nouns, right? But again, if you get something like this on homework and you mark this as a preposition and this as a noun, I would never say that's wrong. That is correct. But again, think about English from the perspective of English professors, right? There's two different ways to look at this, as a preposition and as a noun, or as a preposition phrase that is modifying the noun film, and of course, adjectives modify nouns. But you can also do that with verbs. So for instance, he hit the nail with a hammer. With is the preposition, right? Adding a hammer, which is a noun, an article and a noun, together makes it a prepositional phrase. Okay, what is it modifying? Is it modifying nail? Well, no. It's explaining how he hit something. So hit is a verb that makes this phrase adverbial, as in it's changing this to be a verb, right? Prepositional phrase always contains at least a preposition and its object. So it's always going to be a preposition and a noun. But it can also contain modifiers that add additional meaning to the object. So this is normally going to be things like adjectives. 얘는. He arrives to school in, here's your preposition, a red car. Here's your noun. So this is just an extra adjective to give more meaning to car. So again, if you say this is a preposition, this is an adjective, and this is a noun, you are correct, right? There's nothing wrong in that. But you can also say that this prepositional phrase works together to modify arrived. How did he arrive? He arrived in a red car, making this an adjectival phrase. We kept the lawnmower in the shed out back. Oh, sorry. Is it modified arrive? That's adverbial. My bad. Okay. Adjective complements. Occasionally, an adverbial preposition are used to modify predicative adjectives. And remember, predicative just means in the second half of the clause, right, after the object, or after the subject, rather. And adjectives means it is explaining the subject. So think of the phrase like, I am happy, right? To complete or elaborate upon their meaning. When they are used in this way, they function as adjective complements. So for instance, Megan was afraid of thunderstorms. So here's the of. It's the bridge between afraid, which is an adjective, and thunderstorms, which is a noun. But this phrase together is modifying the subject. That makes all of this an adjective, right? If you're treating it as a clause. Philip, subject, is verb. Upset, right? Adjective. About, preposition. What was said, right? And again, you can treat this all as an adjective explaining more about Philip. Okay. Choosing the appropriate preposition. So this right here, if you're getting ready for the exam, this is one you want to have in the back of your mind, is that very few adjectives are interchangeable. Or prepositions, sorry. Jeez, I can't speak English. Very few prepositions are interchangeable in English. What I mean by that is you can say, I had cereal and milk for breakfast. You can never say any other preposition here. I had cereal and milk to breakfast. Dang, it's not a sentence. Of breakfast. Dang. With breakfast. Dang. In breakfast. Dang. Right? Right? You can only say for. So why is that? It's because there there are certain rules and there's certain ideas of which prepositions sound good with which kind of either verbs or nouns. So you kind of need to treat them as as prepositional phrases, right? They like to go together. So I had breakfast with milk and cereal. The second sentence is a common error, mistake. It implies that you, the cereal, and the milk all had breakfast together. You can have breakfast with your friends and your family, but not with cereal and milk, right? You can say, I had breakfast with my mom and my dad, right? Because here, with means doing this thing together with this group, right? For, of course, meaning, you're having it as part of your breakfast. So if you said, I had mom and dad for breakfast, it would mean you ate mom and dad, which is not good. So please don't get them confused. However, you can use with to show a connection between cereal and milk. So if you're saying the cereal and milk were together, right, doing something, in this case being eaten together, you can say with. I had cereal with milk for breakfast. So these two are together, right, doing the same thing, in this case being eaten, as part of breakfast. Another simple error is, I go to work with my car. Dang, you and your car are not going to work together. You're not friends. You're using your car to get to work, right? So you have to use a preposition that means that you're using it, right? So for instance, I go to work by car, right? Here, by is talking about transportation, going to and from, right? Think of it as 우로, 차로, 회식에 가요, right? So think of it as 로 in that sense. But since you are inside of the car, you can use the word in, right? You are literally inside of your car, so you can actually use the preposition in and it makes sense. I go to work in my car. When choosing the appropriate preposition for a sentence, we must consider the various categories as well as what the prepositional phrase is going to modify. So let's talk about all these different categories. So for your homework, I only need you to remember 4 of them, but some of them might show up on the exam, so please pay attention to all of them. Let's talk about a very common one, prepositions of time, right? Think about any phrase in English dealing with time. At 6 o'clock, right? At noon, right? By 6 p.m., right? Your homework is always due by 6 p.m., right? The deadline is until tomorrow morning, right? These are all prepositions, right? Linking, the subject of the sentence, your homework that's due or what time class is, to a specific time, hence the name. In fact, even o'clock, you might be wondering what o'clock means, right? Like 6 o'clock. Believe it or not, the O in o'clock is a preposition. In this case, it's the preposition of. 6 of the clock. But of course, 6 o'clock, 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 6 o'clock. Over time, it just kind of gotten shortened and shortened and shortened to the point where no English speaker says 6 of the clock. We say 6 o'clock. But even that is the preposition of, right? There is your fun English fact of the day. So whenever your friends ask, what did you learn about English at university? You can say, I learned what the O in o'clock means. It means of. Prepositions of place. This is probably the other most common preposition you'll hear in English. In fact, when I explain prepositions to Korean students, I normally use the example of 에 in Korean, right? 학교에, at school, right? That is a preposition of place. At school, in church, on the roof, by the store, right? Between the fences, right? Behind my car, right? These are all talking about where the noun is related to another noun. So the cat on the roof was hissing at us, right? The cat is physically on the roof. What's the relationship between the cat and the roof? It is on it. So this is the preposition, the road, that the cat and the roof are connected by. Try looking behind the shed. What's the relationship between looking in the shed? Behind. You need to look behind it. So these are extremely common, including in your homework, right? So make sure to be looking for those. Okay. Direction or movement. This is another good one, especially when you're talking about verbs, right? So the house down the road is being sold. So it's a direction, right? You're going down something. They drove across the country, right? So here, the same thing. I'm walking to school. I am, I am running along the road. I am running around my house, right? She is walking towards me, right? These are all direction or movement. Connecting the verb to the subject of the sentence. Okay. Agency. So agency is just by and with. Again, kind of the Korean equivalent is 로, 우로, right? 볼펜으로 써서, 편지 써서, right? So I wrote a letter with a pen, right? I drove to school by car, right? 전철로 학교 운전했어, right? So here, agency just means using something. You are the agent, right? An agent uses something. The book by the famous author is a big hit, right? His heart is filled with emotion. Instrument device, same thing. In this case, it's with specific objects, like by boat or with a hammer, right? He hit the nail with the hammer. The journey by boat is long and arduous. Arduous just means difficult. 어렵다. Reason or purpose, right? Why something is being used. I have a separate computer for work, right? Why do you have the computer? For work, right? Because. What's the reason for work? They left early. Why did they leave early? What's the reason? Because of the storm, right? Connection, of, to, with. This is another good one because we use it a lot in English, especially for makeshift phrases. Especially with the word to. We love the word to in English. A well-written cover letter to employers helps your chances of being hired, right? It says the connection between the letter and the employers. It's the letter to the employers, right? I think she decided to go with Victor. What's the relationship between her going and Victor? She's going with Victor. These are the words that connect those two ideas together. And origin. So origin is the word from, right? We started the trip from Italy, right? Where did you start? Where did you originate from, right? Esto. But in a lot of very fancy English, so especially like here in school, academic English, but also in books and reports and things like that, you'll sometimes hear the word of used in its place. In fact, this is the of used in 6 of the clock, right? It's the origin. Where's the 6 from? It's from the clock. It's the clock's 6, if you will. So here, right, Tom is of German descent. Where's he from? His family line is from Germany. Okay. Prepositions versus infinitives. Now, all this talk of to probably got you really confused. I mean, we've already talked about infinitives, right? To plus the base form of the verb. To run, to play, to move. So, obviously, prepositions and infinitives have to be different. The to in to move can't be a preposition, right? Yes, you are correct. Infinitives are separate from prepositions. It uses a word that we see in prepositions, the word to, but they are separate things in English. So, let's think of it this way. I often ride my bicycle to work. Now, is this a verb? Now, work can be a verb, right? He is working. But here, they're talking about work the place. Hishik, right? Oh, not Hishik. Oh my gosh. Hisa. Hishik. Ugh, I can't even speak Korean or English anymore. I can speak no languages. I often ride my bicycle to work. Here it's work the place. So because of that, right, this is a preposition of direction, right? However, if you have a verb here, in this case the verb stay, and you're trying to turn this into an object, right, then it's an infinitive. I often ride my bicycle to stay healthy. Okay? So if the word here is an actual noun, then this is a preposition. If it's a verb being turned into a noun, it is an infinitive. Because they share the same introductory word, which is to, it's easy to mistake one for the other. Just remember that infinitives always use the word to with the base or bare form of a verb, while preposition to is always followed by a noun, pronoun, or a grammatical element functioning as a noun. Okay? Okay. Oh, it's already your first break time. Yay! All right, so go ahead and take your first break. Do the first quiz. Okay. We're actually going to be able to get through a good chunk of the preposition chapter this time. It's not as long as the verb chapters. So take your break. Make sure to get this done. Then join me back here for some prepositional phrases. You ready? Good. All right, remember a prepositional phrase. Preposition, right? Prepositional means has a preposition, and phrase means 2 or more words. So, 2 or more words which have a preposition. Amen. On the ground, right? You often see this being used together as a phrase. He dropped his ice cream on the ground. On describes location in relation to the ground. Of the bedroom, right? Of specifies that whatever is being discussed is particular to the bedroom. Down the dark alley. Down describes the direction of movement in relation to the alley, while the adjective dark is a modifier specifying that the alley is not well lit, right? So down is being related to alley, which is a noun. The dark is just an adjective saying what kind of alley, right? Into, which is also a preposition, an empty parking lot. So again, empty is saying what kind of parking lot, and parking lot is the noun. In this case, it's, parking is a verb, but here it's being treated as a noun phrase. Parking lot, right? It's a thing, right? Because of the nasty weather. So here, of is the preposition, but because is part of the clause, right? This is a reason clause, why something is happening. So since because is part of the clause, the half of the sentence, it's being grouped all together. They had to go home early because of the nasty weather, right? It's all half of a sentence together. Prepositional phrases can behave in two ways in a sentence. It's either an adjective modifying a noun, or it's an adverb modifying a verb. Makes sense, right? Adjectival prepositional phrases. When a prepositional phrase modifies a noun, pronoun, gerund, that's the verb plus ing, I like swimming, right? Or a noun phrase, it is considered to function as an adjective within the sentence. Makes sense, right? If it's changing or modifying a noun, then it is an adjective, or it's working as an adjective. We call these adjectival, acting as an adjective, prepositional, has a preposition, phrases, two or more words. English grammar is just learning a whole new language, as it were. You're interpreting these phrases. So an adjectival prepositional phrase always follows the noun they are modifying. So they always come after. They always say which kind, what kind, or sometimes how many. 얘는, the cat on the shed is black. So which cat are we talking about? We're talking about the cat on the shed. Not the one on the ground, not the one in the house, not the one on the couch, the one on the shed. I would like to buy some flowers in a glass vase. Okay, what kind of flowers? Flowers that are in a glass vase. People from many different countries have visited here. Okay, what kind of people? Oh, people from many different countries. That kind of people, right? What kind? So adverbial prepositional phrases. So again, adverb means it's modifying a verb, right? It's saying, how the verb is done, or maybe when or where the verb is done. Prepositional has a preposition, phrase, two or more words. If an adverbial phrase is describing an adjective or an adverb, it will follow that word in a sentence. So same thing, it comes after, right? Flowers in a glass vase comes after hue. So for instance, she will leave. When will she leave? After a short run. And there you go, your bonus preposition of the day. After is a preposition. So if you've seen the word after all these different places and you got confused, it's a preposition. I ran a mile down. Okay, where did you run the mile? Down the road. Because of my operation, I had to cancel my flight. Why did you cancel your flight? Because of my operation. Adjectives and adverbs. Adverbial prepositional phrases that modify adjectives and adverbs can be harder to identify because the adjectives and adverbs are usually paired with verbs, so they're coming together. Remember that these prepositional phrases always follow the adjective or adverb. They're always after. I was delighted. How were you delighted? With the results. I can get there more quickly. How can you get there more quickly? On my new bike. So this one's kind of tricky, right? Because it's not modifying get there. It's modifying quickly, which is modifying get there. Kind of tricky, huh? They're kind of layered on top of each other. It's a phrase that's modifying the modification of the verb. Lots of layers there in English, right? Lots and lots of layers. Okay, multiple prepositional phrases. So you can actually have more than one in a sentence, which makes things nice and confusing, especially for long sentences. Sentences can, and often do, have more than one prepositional phrase. What kind of prepositional phrase each one is depends on what it is modifying, which is generally indicated by where it is placed in the sentence and what kind of information it is providing. So let's look here. During the Christmas break, I visited my old school behind our house. So let's break it into two pieces. During the Christmas break. That's saying when you visited, and visit is a verb that makes this the adverbial prepositional phrase. Does that make sense? Right? Since this is explaining when you visited, right? It is adverbial. I visited my old school behind our house. Where is the old school? School is a noun. That makes this an adjective, right? Adjectival prepositional phrase. So again, this looks intimidating, but just think about what it's modifying. This is explaining when you visited. It's an adverb. This is explaining what kind of school, or where the school is, sorry. So it is an adjective. We ended our game with the neighbors at once when we heard our parents calling. Oof. So this is kind of tricky. So this, with the neighbors, is explaining the game. What kind of game? A game with our neighbors, right? So since it's modifying the noun game, it's an adjective. However, at once, right, is describing when we ended. So that makes this half an adverb, because it's modifying the verb. So this one phrase is actually two phrases. It looks like one because they're right next to each other, but it's actually two different phrases. While I was home for the summer after my first semester of college, I decided to work in a store to earn some extra cash. Holy moly! Let's break this down, shall we? All right, pieces. While I was home, okay, why were you home? I was home for the summer, okay? So this says, this modifies the was. It's the reason why you're home. After my first semester, right? Okay. So let's break this down. Okay. After my first semester is describing the first one. It's describing when, right? It's when you were home for the summer. It's describing the verb phrase to clarify when they were home. Whew! So this is, after my first semester is modifying for the summer, clarifying the was. So they're both adverbial. Oh boy. However, the third prepositional phrase of college, boop, 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 right? It's modifying semester, right? So it's saying what kind or which. In that case, it would be an adjective. Okay. And then the last one, work in a store, right? It says how you are working, right? The final prepositional phrase in a store, it is adverbial because it's describing how you work, in this case, where you work. Ooh, boy. As you can see, it's nice and layered. Don't worry, I'm not going to put any of these 4 layered ones on the exam. But you should be able to identify at least one and be able to identify 2. I'll slip one of those onto the exam, okay? Speaking of exams, boom! Take yourself a nice break. Go ahead and do the homework here. We are getting through this at a good clip. I don't know if it's because I got coffee in my veins. But I am excited. So let's keep this train a moving. Okay, take your break, do your quiz here, and then join me here for the next section. It's the categories of prepositions. We've talked about them before. Categories are time, right? Like at 6 o'clock, place, right? At school, direction of movement, towards my house, agency, by myself, instrument or device, by car, reason or purpose, for breakfast, connection, to town, an origin from America, right? So let's look specifically at each category, starting with prepositions of time. A preposition of time describes when or for how long something occurred or will occur. The 3 most common prepositions of time are at, in, and on. Each preposition of time refers to a different increment or point in time. So 얘는 at. At is for specific and short times of day. Let's meet at noon. It's very specific. Chris arrived at 1 o'clock. Very specific. In is used for months, years, and specific times of the day. Beth starts school in August. In 2008, the U.S. held a presidential election. I would rather work on the project in the afternoon. Now, what is different between afternoon and noon? Noon is 딱 12시에. 딱. It's specific. So it's at noon. Afternoon, however, is anywhere from 12시부터 8시까지, right? It's like it's a whole section of time, all the way up until dinner or the evening, right? So in is the better preposition to use. Again, like I said in English, prepositions are not interchangeable. You have to use at with noon. You have to use in with afternoon. On is used for days and dates. On Tuesday, Dad went to the grocery store. Valentine's Day is on February 14th. For is for durations of time. How long? He lived abroad for many years. I've lived in Korea for 12 years, right? During. So during is used for simultaneous events, and you might remember if you've taken my English communication class, right? During is only used with nouns. Don't use during with verbs. It's only used with nouns. We're not supposed to study during class. Since. A continuous event, something that keeps going, originating from a specific point in the past. So it continues. She's been waiting to hear back from the office since yesterday. She's still waiting right now. It started yesterday. So since. I've lived in Korea since 2008. By. By is used for a specific point in the future before which an event must be completed. So it's another way of saying like until, right? So 12시까지, right? By 12 o'clock. You must wake up by 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. Until a continuous event that will terminate at a specific point in the future. So by means that's the deadline. You have to do it before then. Until means you can keep working at it until that time. Daniel cannot sneak out of the house until his parents go to bed. So when would I use until versus by? Especially when you're talking about deadlines, they mean the same thing. The technical difference is something like, if I say your homework is due by 6 o'clock, the implication is that you're going to do your homework and send it at one time. Until implies you're going to keep working at your homework slowly, piece by piece, and then send it until 6 o'clock. But of course, I don't know how you're doing your homework, so you can use them to mean pretty much the same thing. There is a difference, but most English speakers won't care about the difference. And a lot of English speakers don't know the difference, so it doesn't matter too much. Before, 먼저, 전에, something prior to a specific time or event. The moon rose before sunset. After, 후에, something following a specific time or event. Katrina made a promise to help out after work today. 2. Time in relation to the next hour of the day. My watch says it's 10 minutes to 3 right now. So here, it means something very similar to until. So it's 10 minutes until 3 o'clock, right? But there's no deadline. It doesn't have to be done before 3 o'clock. It just will be 3 o'clock. So that's why we use to instead of until. Past. Time in relation to the previous hour of the day. So this is 10 minutes until. This would be 10 minutes after. Ideally, the party would start no later than a 8:15. So here a quarter, 25%. So what's a quarter of an hour? 1시간. Well, 25% of 1시간 would be 15 minutes, 15분. So past, 후에, 8 o'clock, 8시 15분. So 8:15. That's what that means. It's just a fancy way of saying it. Okay, prepositions of place. A preposition of place describes where something is located in reference to something else, or where something occurred or will occur. So, at is at a specific location, like at school. Ben is planning on staying the night at a hotel. Where is he staying? At a hotel. In, you're inside of something like an enclosed space. The rice is in the cabinet. So can you say in school? You can, but the implication of at school means that you're doing anything at school. You're at the gym at school, you're in the library at school, you're outside the school hanging out, you're on the soccer field. You could be doing anything at school. In school implies that you are studying right now, like 수업 중, right? Why? Because, well, inside the classroom is an enclosed space, but school has lots of open places, right? On is for surfaces or the tops of something, like a tabletop. Leave the towel on the counter. By, near or close to, means lack of distance, not far away, very close. The library is close to the train station. So these are some of the few interchangeable prepositions. Their meaning is not interchangeable. You can't say the library is on the train station. No, you have to say by, near, close to. But there's different words. Excuse me. This is because they're borrowed from different languages. Again, a common grammar problem in English. Same with next to and beside. So next to and beside means adjacency, sorry. So it means, well, by or near or close to means it's not far away. Next to means it's directly next to. Tak 옆에. Many people consider it rude to sit next to a stranger in a movie theater. What? Who would think that? Between, right? 사이에. Something in the middle of two people or things. To make a sandwich, simply put something between two slices of bread. Behind, right? 뒤에. Something at the back of something. I stood behind my sister while we waited in line. In front of, 바로 앞에. Something situated before something. Let's put the dresser in front of the window. Above or over, 위에. Something higher than something. The arch above the hallway reminded Natalie of a castle she'd visited. Below or under, 밑에 아래, something lower than something. All children fear the monsters below their beds. Now note, over and above can describe something higher than something else, but over can also describe something directly in contact and covering something beneath it. So like, I put my blanket over my sleeping son. So it is 위에, but it's also on. So here, over can sometimes mean on, depending on the context. Under and below can both describe something lower than something else, 밑에, 아래, but under can also describe something that is directly in contact with something on top of it. So for instance, my son is under the blanket. All right, prepositions of direction or movement. A preposition of direction or movement describes how, where, or in what way something moves. All right, real quickly, let me check to make sure this thing's still recording. Okay, good. So for instance, sorry, I'm really paranoid about like this thing like glitching out and stopping and me having to re-record all this. All right. To. It describes a movement with a specific aim, direction, or destination. My brother went to Europe with his friends. It's a specific destination. To Europe. From is bande, right? If this is this is eso, right? Movement with a specific point of origin. She told stories about the time she walked to Spain from France. Yeah, you could do that. They're actually pretty close together. Over. Movement higher than or across something else. The birds flew over the trees. They're higher than the trees. Above. Movement to a higher point than something else. You're going up. 위로. He shot his arrow above the target. Under, beneath. Movement lower than something. The large worm went under the dirt. Along. Movement on a straight line or edge. The childhood friends rode their bicycles along the road. So here it's talking about following a straight line, right? Roads are generally straight. And if you're right next to a straight road, walking next to it, it's along the road. So like a sidewalk would be along the road. You can be on the sidewalk or along the road at the same time. Around, movement in a circular direction. So like, 동그라미, 동그라미, 동그라미. The couple held hands and skated around the rink. Since an ice rink for like ice skating is circular, we call that around. Across, movement from one end to the other. I walked across the flimsy bridge, right? So you're going from one side to the other side. Just like a road, right? You walk across the road. If you're going from one side of the road, from like 왼쪽 to 왼쪽, right? From left side to the right side. Through, movement from one side of an enclosed space to the other. The burglar entered the house through the basement window. So the window is a small enclosed space, so he entered through the window. Into, movement ending inside of something. You started outside, you ended inside. If you jump into the water like this, you can make a big splash. You started your jump outside the water, and you ended your jump inside the water. So into. Out of is bande. You started inside and you're moving outside. Get out of that cave before the bear comes back. Towards. Moving closer to something. Moving in something's direction. Like you keep 계속, right? You keep moving in that direction. Laughing, she threw up her hands and ran towards the park. Away from is the opposite. You keep moving farther away from something. Get away from the fire before you get burned. Onto. So you started off, but you're ending on top. Be careful climbing onto that ledge. And then off, of course, you're not on it anymore. Parents are always yelling at their kids to get off the furniture. Up is movement heading up. When you use a fireplace, smoke goes up the chimney. Right? What direction? Up. And of course, down is bande. Right? If this is 위로, this is 아래. 아래로, 아래로. He jumped down and hurt his knee. Okay. This is just a pronunciation note. Toward and towards mean the same thing. However, in formal American English, toward sounds more professional. So just keep that in mind. Toward and towards means the same thing. It's more like a satri, like the difference. All right. A preposition of agency describes a person or thing that has caused or is causing something to occur. They're the agent, right? They're making something happen. Sentences containing prepositions of agency are usually written in the passive voice and employ the prepositions by or with. 얘는, the house was built by the three siblings. Her heart is filled with emotion. Prepositions of instrument or device. So this is you physically using something, or you're making something happen using a noun, right? Uro, if you will, in Korean. So Aunt Patricia returned home. All right, how did she return home? By ferry, by boat. She opened the locked door. What did she use? With an old key. May I finish my homework? How will you finish your homework? On your computer, right? Using the computer. Prepositions of reason or purpose, right? Why something is being used. Now, they don't always have the word because, but they always have the meaning of because. Everything I did was for you, because of you. Through her bravery, we were able to escape unharmed. Why? Because of her bravery. Through her bravery. Because of the delay, I was late for the parade. Why were you late? Because of the delay. The employees refused to work on account of their low pay. Why did they refuse to work? Because of their low pay on account of. He knows from experience how to deal with them. How does he know how to deal with them? Because of his experience, from his experience. A preposition of connection describes possession, relationships, or accompaniment together, right? The Statue of Liberty, right? The statue contains liberty, right? The Statue of Liberty is located in New York Harbor. A well-written essay is impressive. To whom? To teachers. Lisa wanted to go to the concert. With whom? With Victor. Origin. Where does it come from? When we describe a person or thing's origin, such as nationality, hometown, state, ethnicity. Ethnicity means your family's blood history, right? So your family's blood history would be Korean, right? For most of you. Or the place where something was built or designed, we typically use the preposition from. I met the most delightful couple from Italy. Right? Where are they from? From Italy. I'm from New York originally, but I've lived in Dallas for many years. The new professor is of Turkish descent. Where's he from? Turkey. So here, descent, they're talking about your family tree. So from Halabaji to Appa to you, right? It goes down, right? You go down your family tree. So they're talking about your ethnicity, your family's blood history. The new computer from the tech giant should be revolutionary, right? Who's it from? The tech giant. Okay, take a break and do your quiz. We are trucking along. We should be able to get at least one more section. Maybe we should be able to get 2 sections. You were doing good. I appreciate the hard work. Take your break and do your quiz, and then we'll come back for the next part. All right, some common prepositional errors. Here are some common mistakes that people make with prepositions, especially for non-native speakers, but even for native speakers as well. So let's take a look at some common mistakes so we don't make them ourselves. Verbs that describe the movement from one place to another generally take the preposition to. However, when a verb describes movement from one place into another, we often use the prepositions in or into. This can lead to confusion between the two prepositions when using a motion verb that can describe either scenario. Yenin. I went to London last year. Yes, that is correct. London is being treated as a place, and even though you are inside London, we wouldn't say that, right? I went in London last year. No. Again, in means like inside an enclosed space, right? London's a big place, right? You're not really inside just the city. There's outside the city and places around it. And so to is correct. When we use a motion verb this way, we use the preposition of movement to. The only exception to the rule is the verb phrase go home, where home is an adverbial noun, right? It's a noun working as a verb that modifies the verb. Otherwise, we need to use to express going A to B, right? Go to home? We just say go home, right? We don't say go to home. Why? It's just a set phrase. It's just the way we say that phrase. There's no particular grammar rule for it. That's why it's an exception, right? Here are some more examples of motion verbs that take the preposition to. Walk to school, run to the store, move to the left, turn to the right, swim to the shore, drive to the country, cycle to work. Of course, we can use other prepositions of movement when we describe different relationships between the verb and the object of the preposition. So, walk across the road, run along the river, cycle down around the park, drive over the bridge, swim up and down the pool, went in the school. So here, they're making sure to use prepositions that more accurately describe the relationship between the two. Drive to the bridge would mean you got in your car and you drove in the direction of the bridge and you stopped before going over it, right? Drive over the bridge means you drove to the bridge and then continued over it. So it actually has a different meaning, right? To and over, very different meaning. Static verbs at versus to. Again, another very common mistake. Again, in Korean, if you translated at or to, they mean the same thing, right? 학교에. So when do you use one and not the other? Well, that's what we're going to talk about. I arrived at the airport late. I arrived to the airport late? No. So why is that? Well, remember, we use to with motion verbs when we describe the movement from one location to another, right? I arrived from Korea to the airport late? Maybe. Arrive, however, is considered a static verb, meaning it indicates no movement from point A to point B. It's just 도착하다, right? In this case, we need to use the preposition at, which is used to indicate being at a location, right? Being in a location, right? So if you're talking about going from point A to point B, right? There's movement there. You can use to. But arrive, 도착했어요, right? It doesn't say movement. It's just you're there. So it's considered static, not moving. I was at the theater last night. Yes, because you're not moving around at the theater. I stayed at my brother's house last night. Yes, because you're not moving around, you're staying at the house. Possession and access, using to versus of. The prepositions to and of can both be used to signify that something belongs to or is a property of another thing. However, we use to indicate that something grants access, gives us access, or leads into another thing, which is a relationship that of does not describe. 이는. This is the key to my room. It gives me access to my room. This is the key of my room? No. You can say my room key, but you can't say key of my room. There are also certain instances in which we could use either preposition and still have a correct sentence, but the meaning would be different. So, this is the main door of the house, right? This main door belongs to the house, right? It is the 집의 대문, right? This is the main door to the house. This is saying this is the door that gives us access to the house. So in this sentence, right, the house and the door are the most important things. We're not even a part of it. But in this sentence, we are a part of it, right? Because we are the ones getting access to the house. Different media, in versus on, right? Like on the TV versus in the newspaper. Another pair of similar prepositions is in and on, which can both be used to describe the medium by which something is seen. We use in when we are talking about something appearing in printed media, in the newspaper, in a magazine, in a book. And we use on for talking about something appearing on television or digital media. So on the radio, on the computer, on YouTube, right? So if it's printed, it's in. I read it in the newspaper. If it's something digital or analog, it's on TV, on the radio, on YouTube. All right, containment and nativity, in versus of. The Nile is the longest river in the world. Yes. The Nile is the longest river of the world? No. Why not? Well, remember that of relates to belonging, while in refers to being inside or within something. So the earth doesn't own the Nile River. The Nile River is just inside the earth. Does that make sense? He is a citizen of Greece. He belongs to Greece legally, right? He is a Greek citizen. He is a citizen in Greece? No, right? Because again, he belongs to Greece. The gray wolf of North America is a beautiful creature. Why? Well, because it legally belongs to North America. The gray wolf in North America is a beautiful creature? Nah, I mean, it's in North America, but it belongs to it, right? It is North America's gray wolf. All right, for performance, in versus at. Performance here meaning how well you do something. When we describe how well someone does something, we often use the verb phrase is good, followed by the preposition at, is good at. However, if we use the verb phrase does well, we usually use the preposition in, which can lead to a lot of confusion. Yinun. My brother is good at English. Yes. Remember, this is the adjective good, right? Describing his English. So we use at. My sister does well in school. Remember, well is an adverb describing how she does something, right? So if we're using the adverb well, we use in. My sister does well in school. If we're using the adjective good, we use at. My brother's good at English. Over, on, and at the weekend. Everybody's working for the weekend. When we talk about our plans for an upcoming weekend, there are a number of prepositional constructions we can use. In American English, the most common prepositions used are over and on. I record your classes over the weekend. I record your classes on the weekend. In British English, the most common preposition is at, though over is occasionally used. I do my homework on the weekend. I will do my homework at the weekend. That's for British English. I will do my homework during the weekend. Neither American or British English uses that very often. For transitive versus intransitive verbs, we must be careful with prepositions when it comes to transitive. Remember, that means like across, right? I like chicken, right? Across is me and chicken using the word like, versus intransitive, right? I swim on weekends, right? If we want to express a direct relationship between an intransitive verb and something that seems to be receiving its action, we often use a preposition. For example, I listened to the radio last night. Okay, so it's me and the radio directly through listened. That is transitive. I'll wait for you. That is correct. Oh, sorry, these are the intransitive verbs. Yep. So I listened to the radio last night, right? Prepositions with transitive verbs. I'll answer the phone. Likewise, we must be careful not to use a preposition with objects of transitional verbs. So I'll answer the phone, not I'll answer to the phone. She is going to marry a lawyer, not she is going to marry with the lawyer. So if it's transitive, no prepositions needed. I asked him to buy some bread, not I asked to him to buy some bread. The verb ask can be an intransitive verb in some instances, in which case we can use the preposition for. I asked Jeff. I asked for Jeff. Here it's asking on behalf of Jeff, right? So I asked Jeff and I asked for Jeff are different things, right? 제프에 물어봤어, 제프 위에서 물어봤어, right? Just very different. The transitive verb are able to take both direct objects and indirect objects. If a verb is capable of taking an indirect object, that person or thing appears immediately after the verb and before the direct object. John sent me a letter. Good. John sent a letter to me. Good. However, not all transitive verbs can take indirect objects. If a verb is unable to have a true or direct object, we have to put the person or thing receiving the direct object in a prepositional phrase with to. So, I'll explain the problem to you. Good. I'll explain you the problem. No. We have to do it this way. Verbs that take both to and at. They often have subtle or different meanings. Many verbs are able to take multiple prepositions after them. However, this often results in a change to the sentence's meaning. So again, prepositions are not interchangeable. In the sentences where you can use more than one preposition, it's used differently. It changes the meaning. So for instance, I shouted to Mary, but she was too far away to hear me. Here, she's shouting to Mary to get her attention, right? She wants Mary to hear her. He kept shouting at me, even though I had apologized. Shouting at means yelling at, 화가 right? Because you are angry, you are yelling at them. So shouting to and shouting at are entirely different words, right? They're entirely different vocabulary. Throw to versus throw at, same thing. She threw the ball to the dog. Here, if you throw something to someone, you are playing a game. She was so angry with her husband that she threw her wedding ring at him. So here, if you throw something at someone, you are trying to hurt them, right? Throw to, you are playing a game. Throw at, you're trying to hurt them. Point to versus point at. So if you point to something, you're showing the direction. She pointed to the sky, right? She's pointing up. She pointed to the sky. If you're pointing at someone, you are accusing them of something or making fun of them or something like that. You're the one who stole my bag, she shouted, pointing at the thief, right? She's accusing them of doing something bad. Okay. All right, learning the correct prepositions. Sadly, it's memorization, right? I've had the luck of growing up in a country where I get to hear the correct prepositions every day for 40 years. You don't get that luxury. You're not that lucky. So you have to memorize all the different correct prepositions. So what I recommend doing is when you see a preposition, right, in an English sentence, you're reading a book, you are studying for school, you're watching a movie, memorize how the preposition is being used, right? The use of prepositions. Okay, now you know with use, you're going to use of instead of to or on or with, right? All right, so prepositions with nouns. So here's a guideline for the most common prepositions used with nouns. You can use to, for, of, in, on, at, from, with, about, and between. And again, they always come after a noun. So here are some rules. Again, there's no clear-cut rules. However, you can see some associations, some common pairs, some common phrases that pop up. I could never lose respect for you, right? Respect for. So using this logic, if you have respect for someone, you can have admiration for someone. You can have esteem for someone. Yes. So even though respect for is the actual phrase, you can use that to kind of teach yourself, okay, other words that mean respect or are similar to respect, if they're used in the same situation, probably can use the same preposition. 십중팔구, that works. But because English is stupid, it's not always the case. There are exceptions. So for instance, my addiction to coffee is unhealthy. Okay, so addiction to coffee. However, the word obsession can only be used with the preposition with. Obsession with coffee. And dependence, you can only depend on something. My dependence on coffee. So even though these words all mean the same thing, they all have different prepositions that they're used with. And again, it's memorization. You just have to remember. Treat these phrases as new vocabulary. So that's nouns. What about verbs with prepositions? Well, for many words, the prepositions used with nouns are the same prepositions used with nouns associated verb forms. So for example, he discussed his reaction to the results. He discussed how he reacted to the results. So this is reaction to and reacted to. The shun means it's a noun, right? And the original react is a verb. So because it's the same root word, they have the same preposition. Makes sense. I have knowledge of that particular issue, right? That's the noun version of know, is knowledge. I know of the particular issue, right? The verb form know and of. Knowledge of, know of. Yes. However, there are always exceptions. I have deep sympathy for him, right? I deeply sympathize with him. So the verb sympathize, we use with and not for. She has an obsession with comic books. That's the noun version. She obsesses over that comic book. The verb version, we use over. Why? Because it's a phrase, right? In English, at one point, 100, 200, 300 years ago, we decided obsesses over sounds better than obsession over. And we decided obsession with sounds better than obsession with, right? Or obsession over. All right. Examples of common pairings. So common words that like to go together is noun plus to. So access to, addiction to, answer to, approach to, damage to, deduction to, devotion to, reaction to, response to, solution to, threat to. Also, we like noun plus for. So admiration for, cure for, desire for, hope for, need for, passion for, reason for, respect for, room for, sympathy for, and talent for. And nouns plus of, advantage of, like to take advantage of, disadvantage of, fear of, habit of, intention of, knowledge of, lack of, memory of, process of, smell of, sound of, taste of. So you notice a lot of these with of have to do with senses. That might be something to keep in mind, right? Like the sense of sound, the sense of smell, sense of taste, or even thought. Nouns plus in. Belief in, change in, decrease in, delay in, experience in, increase in, interest in, pleasure in, reduction in, rise in. And nouns plus on. Advice on, attack on, ban on, emphasis on, focus on, report on. Noun plus at. The preposition at is only paired with a few nouns. For example, made an attempt at something. We have no chance at winning. Often we use the preposition in conjunction with which, 예는. This is the age at which. There's always a point at which. Noun plus from is only occasionally used, 예는. The town sought protection from bandits. His transition from pauper to prince. Noun plus with. Generally, nouns combined with point to relationships and connections between two or more things. What's the matter with you? I noticed a small problem with the story you submitted. Her close relationship with her sister is inevitable. If you're having trouble with the assignments, consult your teacher. Nouns plus about. When paired with a noun, about means concerning or in regards to. His anxiety about public speaking is so bad that he sweats when he's on stage. Do you have any information about the changes in the schedule? She wants to hear the story about her favorite superhero again. Noun plus between. A noun that takes the preposition between forms a comparison between two things. Here are some common combinations. For her thesis, Stacy submitted a comparison between classical music and contemporary rock. The connection between good and evil is fascinating. Is there a difference between green onions and scallions? Okay. Nouns with multiple prepositions. All right. Okay, real quick. I'm going to see how much time we got left. Okay. All right. Some nouns are capable of combining with more than one preposition. In some of these cases, the meaning does not change no matter which preposition is chosen. My opinion of her is the same as yours. My opinion about her is the same as yours. Abby is an expert in changing tires. Abby is an expert at changing tires. I appreciate his newfound love for animals. I appreciate his newfound love of animals. In some cases, however, the meaning changes entirely when a different preposition is substituted. No one can deny the positive impact of France. Here it's saying that France had a positive impact on us. No one can deny the positive impact on France. This means someone or something had a good impact for France. So it's literally the opposite. France being good for someone else and someone else being good for France. Her transition from vegetarian to vegan wasn't difficult. Her transition to vegetarian from vegan wasn't difficult. Literally the opposite, right? From Momo to Momo from Momo, right? Literally the opposite meaning. Okay, here's another quiz. We only got 5 minutes left. I don't think that's enough time for a whole nother section, right? Yeah, okay. That's fine. We got through a lot today. All right, so make sure to do the last quiz here. Make sure you're doing the quizzes. Make sure you're writing down the answers. Make sure you understand why those are the correct answers. Because again, about 40% of your exam here next week is going to be based on the questions in this book. That's why I make you do the quizzes. All right, make sure you understand them, right? If you don't understand something, make sure to send me an email or come to my Zoom Q&As. I want you to get better, right? And, some of you are doing very, very well. So that makes me feel like I'm doing the right thing here. So if you are falling behind, you are in the minority and you need to take the initiative to contact me and get help, okay? Alrighty, thanks so much for the hard work. And I will see you all next week for your exam. God bless. Bye-bye.